Hello, everybody. Welcome back to an episode of I'm Pissed, where I talk about topics that really piss me off. Today's episode, cancellations. Is over parties, shitty hashtags, petitions, exposed videos, all with the purpose of accomplishing one goal: ending a man's career. Cancellations nowadays are pretty commonplace. I mean, it seems like every other day, someone new is getting canceled. But I want to focus on specific people who have been canceled throughout their career. I want to focus on people who have been canceled for some of the dumbest, most ill-informed shit of all time. This episode, we're going to be covering some of the most infuriating cancellations that ever occurred. It's the summer of 2019. The commentary community is in relative peace for the most part, being in a recovery stage from what happened about a month ago with James Charles. Everything is, for the most part, pretty good. Numbers are rising, new people are coming into the commentary community. It was all going fine for the most part, up until June 11th of 2019, where the ex-girlfriend of a guy named Slazo came out with a statement on Twitter, and this tweet was responsible for some of the slimiest actions committed by a YouTuber ever. In the twitlonger, Shay, the person who made it, explains how a YouTuber by the name of Slazo and her were dating, her being 14 and him being 16 at the time. She explains how he forced her into uncomfortable situations, like touching her in the movie theater, trying to do sexual shit in the park, and some degradation type shit, making her feel like she's nothing more than a sex object. Many people came to support Shay, the most notable ones being I'm Alex, Hyojin, Weasterner, Dolan Dark, and probably a couple more people that I'm missing. The community backlash would be so strong that Slazo, reaching about 800,000 subscribers a little bit ago, would plummet down in subs by this twitlonger. Everybody was against him. The commentary community at the time was clowning on him, calling him some very disgusting things, calling him a rapist, calling him all these other very deplorable shit. The people who were accusing him used this manipulative language like, "People don't stay silent for this long," and "I'll believe my friend over you." Now, these were only backed up by some very small cut Discord messages between Slazo and Shay. Now, I wasn't too keen on hopping on the Slazo hate bandwagon because there really wasn't that much solid proof against him. A couple of Discord screenshots are not going to do it for me. I need to see solid, concrete proof, and I need to hear both sides before I can even begin formulating my opinion. Many people were quick to hop on the Slazo hate train before he even released his response, which confused me because you would think that people would want to hear both sides. They wouldn't want to just run a train on someone without even hearing what they're going to say. But unfortunately, that's kind of how the internet is nowadays. So, I waited. For a week. 2 weeks. I waited for a little while until Slazo finally released his response called My Side, a video where Slazo greatly debunks a large portion of what Shay said. Accusation 1. She was pressured into sex.
At the beginning, she states that she had intentions to wait until 16 before doing anything. I never got this impression. I do have plenty of evidence from very early on in the relationship where she clearly made no intention to wait until 16.
Accusation 2. Slazo attempted to touch her in the theater, and it made her uncomfortable.
And this confused me when I read it at first because it's not really how it happened. We went into the cinema, we had our first kiss, our teeth hit each other's, neither of us knew what we were doing, and I was willing to call it quits there when she pulls my hand down and says to touch her, which is a pretty long way from how she portrays it in her version of the story. In fact, she was actually the one who brought up the entire idea of doing anything in the cinema. It was her idea, and I had no reason to believe she wasn't as in on this as I was.
Accusation 3. This was her first relationship, and he made it a shitty one.
I was under the impression, from these screenshots here, that she's had at least 2 boyfriends and 1 girlfriend before we ever met.
Slazo, of course, covers more than that, but I recommend watching the video for yourself because it really does speak for itself on a lot of cases. It just goes to show you that a lot of what she said was lies, and the fact that she lied is really disheartening because it puts salt on the wound of actual victims of abuse. If she wants to put a message out there of abuse being bad, that's fine, but don't fucking lie. Once this response was released, the community inherently shifted towards Slazo's side. The main accusers, or the ones mainly supporting Shay in this entire situation, kind of fell flat on their face. Some apologized, but some didn't. Some doubled, tripled, and quadrupled down during this entire situation. which kind of gives a good judge of character, showing how they're incredibly moronic and unable to handle any serious situations. This is advice not only to YouTubers, but people in general. Wait till both sides are out there. Don't just pick sides when you only hear one person. You need to wait for both sides to come out. And when I saw people on Twitter immediately siding with Shay, it really got me angry because they don't know the full story. They're just hearing it from one person. At the end of the day, what she said was a he said, she said situation. But Slazo is not the person that she was portraying him to be. Slazo is not a rapist. Slazo is not an abuser. A bad boyfriend, perhaps, but definitely not the claims that she was putting out. I'm Alex, made a Twitter video giving his opinion on the Slazo response, and let me warn you right here, it's not very good.
I don't believe he's innocent. I don't think he's innocent at all. Che may not also be innocent and may have hid stuff and used jokes to try and maybe push a certain agenda, but at the same time, the stuff that Michael admitted to is stuff that makes me not want to be friends with somebody who is capable of doing those things, even the things he admitted to.
Still denounces Slazo despite him being proven almost entirely innocent. Hyojin plays the victim card, at the time hinting that she was going to kill herself because of all the backlash she was receiving. Whether or not I doubt that she's actually suicidal at that time is completely out of the question. Regardless if she was actually suicidal or not, she fucking lied. And she didn't lie about some small shit. She lied about allegations of rape and abuse. Those aren't light accusations. You can't just plead ignorance or plead that you're helping your friend or call yourself suicidal, all of a sudden say you're mentally ill when you're in some hot water. That's not the game to play. Yeah, it'll work in the short term, but in the long term, you're gonna lose all your support from your fans and everybody. Dolan Dark and Blues Dank somewhat apologized. Dolan Dark apologized, Blues Dank apologized much later, and Weast, well, he's Weast.
She's a liar and it's been proven. Yeah, I'm sure Shay lied about some of the stuff she said. I know with the fucking Me Too movement and a lot of fake allegations of it coming out for people, it would be prime time to say some shit to get someone deplatformed, right? Yeah, I did call him a sexual abuser. He sexually abused his partner. Shay lied about some of the stuff she said. You believe he's a sex abuser from Shay's lies and you called Shay a liar? Yeah, that's connect those dots. Yes, absolutely. No, Shay left a lot of stuff out of context, and in that situation, you're lying about shit, right? You may as well be lying. She left stuff out of context. There was some stuff where
how you been streaming, man?
It humanized him more. A lot of the stuff she said, especially where she cropped some stuff, it demonized him.
A year later, and Slazo's channel isn't exactly the same. It hasn't fully recovered. He seems mentally sound even after all of the accusations that were thrown at him. But this situation, despite it being proven largely false, will leave a stain on his reputation forever. Some people, a large portion of people, still genuinely believe that Slazo is a rapist. The fact that that's a thing, the fact that people still haven't received the truth because of these morons accusing him of it, is the problem. James Charles is a makeup guru YouTuber who in May of 2019 had his entire world crumbling down before him. All from one video. A video uploaded by a woman named Tati Westbrook, who at the time had a very moderate following. The beauty community was already known for having this somewhat toxic, almost equal to commentary type of relationship. But this situation, this event, was the one to spark that whole thing up. The things leading up to this video being released were, from what I understand, several things. Now, I normally never care about this side of YouTube. I find it to be very boring and uninteresting. But this kind of caught my attention, mainly because it was the biggest event at the time, the biggest sub-loss of all. Record sub-loss. Now, in the video, Tati throws out multiple accusations towards James. For one, she claims that James sponsored her rival company. Pretty petty in itself, but then we start going down into the serious allegations. She alleged that James was using his money and fame to entice straight men to turn gay.
Oh my God, you tried to trick a straight man into thinking he's gay yet again, and somehow you're the victim. You know, it's really disgusting to manipulate someone's sexuality, especially when they are still, emerging into adulthood and don't quite have everything figured out. You are using your fame, your power, your money to play with people's emotions. You're threatening to ruin them. You're threatening to embarrass them. And you're doing that to have them behave sexually in your favor, even if they're straight. And you know what? That's not okay.
Now, that was only one of the heavy accusations that she threw at James. And we're going to dive into those a little bit later. But for now, that video was enough to send James into the stratosphere. He received quite possibly the largest bandwagon of hate that I've seen on this platform forever. Millions upon millions of people were going out of their way to claim this as fact, to not even look into it. He lost 1 million subscribers in one day, over 1 million. And that really blew my mind. I never thought that the community would be this responsive to any situation at all. Now, in the midst of this entire situation, James released an apology video, basically addressing everything that was going on, apologizing to Tati for the way that he made her feel, and also several other things that were kind of swept under the rug. At the time, I was kind of torn. She didn't exactly provide too much evidence against James in the video. A couple screenshots, but a lot of the large claims that she made were kind of her word against his. So at this point, I was still in the middle. But this apology was just terrible. It was so bad that honestly, I don't even think that he believed himself at that point. It just followed the classic YouTuber apology layout. A sigh at the beginning.
Hi all.
Looking as sad as possible, half breaking down in tears. I mean, it just checked off everything on the classic YouTuber apology. Now, James had numerous people coming out against him after this video was released. The most notable ones being Jeffree Star and the waiter that Tati accused James of trying to turn him gay. And they both came out with equally large claims against him. The waiter somewhat approving of what Tati was saying, and Jeffree equally following suit. At the time, James was still getting immense hate from this entire situation, not even really responding to any of the true criticism that was given to him. However, when all hope seemed lost for him, he dropped a video called No More Lies, in which he almost entirely debunked every single statement that Tati made. Just like this last situation, almost everyone began to side with James, and the crew that accused him, more specifically Tati, Jeffree, the waiter, and anyone associated with them, were looked under a microscope by many of the YouTubers who originally accused James of this stuff as well. Fast forward about a year later, and they're not doing too well. More specifically, Tati. Tati made a video that I talked about previously on this channel. It was quite possibly the worst owning up apology. It wasn't even an apology, really. She basically just spun the blame on other people, and she kind of fell into obscurity. The other two that she accused of forcing her to make this video, which were Jeffree and Shane Dawson, they're not exactly doing the greatest right now. Who's to say that Shane even comes back to YouTube at all? I know he hasn't exactly been very absent from YouTube, but he was put under a lot of heavy criticism by many people. Not even just for this situation, but a lot of other stuff that he was doing. And Jeffree very much the same. However, the fact that James managed to survive a 3 million subscriber loss when the entire world was against him, that's impressive, and something that I've never seen happen on YouTube before. He's entirely recovered. In fact, not only has he recovered, but he's booming right now. He's a booming channel. So, more power to him. I can definitely say that this situation, despite it being very much bad and possibly could have gone without it, I think that even James would say that he learned something from this situation. 2016 was the golden age of the internet, more specifically YouTube. This was a time when edgy content ran rampant all throughout the site. Channels like Filthy Frank and iDubbbz were just picking up steam at this point, getting very large fan bases from their raunchy videos that they made. It seemed at this time that any random with a $30 mic could get a million subs on YouTube. It really was the dream back then, and that era of YouTube was the era that really inspired me to want to start making YouTube videos in general. I was an avid viewer of channels like Leafy's, Filthy Franks, iDubbbz, Max Mofo, Grady Underay, and all the other commentator YouTubers that aren't really around nowadays. Now this story follows Keemstar during the spring of 2016. This was a time when Keemstar was considered the supervillain of the internet, and he still is to a certain extent considered that. But at this point, this was when the Keemstar hate was at its apex. By this point in time on YouTube, there were already a large portion of people who found a heavy disdain in Keemstar, which is understandable because, you know, despite the fact that I do enjoy Keemstar's content and personality, he hasn't exactly had the cleanest of reputations. He has definitely made mistakes in the past, and this was a point when all of that came out to the public. Now at the time, people were already making exposed videos on Keemstar and Drama Alert, and those videos were getting a lot of traction at the time. Keemstar, Leafy, and Grady Underay had this cooperative relationship, almost like a business relationship. They were friends with each other, legitimately, but also for the purpose of business, to promote one another. But that prospect all changed on May 5th of 2016, when a YouTuber named iDubbbz released a video called Content Cop, Keemstar. This video was at the roadhead of the Keemstar exposed train, and it kind of gave people this sort of nudge to want to expose Keemstar even more. People saw this as a booming business to attack Keemstar for many of the mistakes that he's made in his YouTube career. And you would think that Keemstar's friends, Leafy's here and Grady Underay, would want to defend him, would want to say, no, Keemstar's my friend, he's not guilty, and I'm sticking by him. Well, that didn't exactly happen. In June of that same year, Leafy and Grade both released videos against Keemstar and his channel, which basically heightened the Keemstar hate train even more. Keemstar was bleeding subscribers at that point, and anything that he really posted was dislike bombed to death. Everything, tens of thousands of dislikes, all of his videos getting ratioed. Anything that he said on Twitter really was taken out of context. I mean, that in itself was a meme. The phrase taken out of context was memed a lot by Leafy and Grady Underay in their exposed videos. Keemstar would constantly switch between hosts, Ty Blue taking some days, and Keemstar taking the others. At one point, he even had a full hiatus from YouTube. Not necessarily the channel, but he himself took a small break because honestly, it was rough for him. He was in a very bad position, and he couldn't really say anything without being scrutinized by the internet.
For quite a while now, Keemstar, Killer Keemstar, the bearded bastard you guys all know and love, hasn't really been happy doing this show. The love he had for doing this has slowly faded, and he's the type of dude to always want to go out and create new shit and do new stuff, which is why he's decided to step down as full-time host of Drama Alert, and I'm officially your new host.
Everybody was against him. No one was defending him at all. And there was a lot of criticism at that time that was very genuinely, looking back, unfair against Keemstar. People were exposing him not for the things that he actually deserved criticism on, but lies. They made up evidence against him and just used it to tarnish his reputation. It added up to Leafy making 5 videos against Keemstar in total, each getting millions of views and a ton of support. The claims that were made in these Keemstar exposed videos, specifically made by Leafy and Grade, were very damaging. Grade even saying that Keemstar was abusive to his girlfriend, and he insinuated, well, not even insinuated, he directly said that Keemstar had the potential of being a pedo based on an alleged video of a 15-year-old girl supposedly posing with Keemstar signs covering her private parts.
On August the 14th, 2010, a 15-year-old girl got completely bollock naked on DJ Keemstar's Blog TV stream and had pieces of paper saying "I love Keemstar" covering her tits and her pussy i.e. her cooch, I believe is the medical term. And as if that wasn't bad enough, right? She then turns around and shows her bare naked underage asshole, i.e. her Keemstar, I believe is the medical term.
Now, in the midst of all this Keemstar hate, Keemstar dropped a video responding to all of the criticism he received, and he almost entirely debunked everything. He addressed points like the swatting of Smile for YouTube. He addressed points like the doxing of Josh A. He covered almost everything, and he did so in a very well-articulated manner. He jumped through every single criticism, at least almost every single criticism that was thrown at him. Now, at this point in late summer of 2016, the Keemstar hate was still going strong at its finest. But Keemstar had a project that he was working on, and that project was called the Baited Podcast. Now, this featured YouTubers Tommy C and Colossal's Crazy. And Colossal's Crazy was a well-known detractor of Keemstar for quite some time. If you would watch his videos, you would definitely see the Keemstar malice that was hinted in the content that he produced. The dynamic on that show was honestly very entertaining to watch. Seeing two people that hate each other just going at it over and over again. Now, this podcast was responsible for really opening people's eyes as to how Leafy and Grade and everybody really just jumped the gun on Keemstar way too soon for nothing. In the beginning of the podcast, the main topic that they covered was, of course, the Keemstar drama that was, of course, centered around Keemstar himself, Leafy, and Grady Under A. And half the episodes would start with them talking about something entirely different, but by the end of it, they would just be screaming at each other about how Leafy wronged Keemstar. Now, while Keemstar's reputation was back on the rise, it would boost even higher by September of that year, and it was all responsible for the same man who brought him down there in the first place. Idols released a video called Content Cop, Leafy, on September of that year, and that video was spent just ripping in to Leafy with the utmost brutality. But, in the short of it, Keemstar got his redemption arc. People opened their eyes to how Leafy and Grade backstabbed him, and they really got to dive into what the community intent was behind those videos. Leafy was even featured on the Baited Podcast to debate against Keemstar, and the podcast just made Leafy look so bad.
Justified.
Okay, but
it's like you said some stuff like quote for quote.
Stuff that was not
I'm
real
white. I control the world or some shit.
Real.
Like
you took every fucking thing that you could find that made me look bad, that wasn't real, and tried to portray it as real, and that's bullshit, Leafy.
If I tried
do you understand when you uploaded that video? I got comments saying, "Why? How could you smash that ice cream in a kid's face?" All right, I got comments saying, "Oh, you just do YouTube for money." I got comments saying you're a racist. All this stuff is not real. You put that in your video to make me look as bad as possible. You fucking lied about me in front of millions of people. Yes, your video
I did not
is
fucking
a lie. The
no, I did not
fucking
lie. I did not. Okay, you gonna let me talk or not, dude? You talk about me all the time on the fucking podcast, and then you don't even let me fucking talk.
I had your back so many times.
Let me fucking
literally
talk.
backstabbed me
Dude,
for fucking
when are you gonna
views
fucking finish?
and money to get ahead on YouTube because being friends with Keemstar at that time was
Daniel,
a bad
can I fucking
business
respond
decision.
to your fucking
So
one
you
of your
made
points?
a good business.
And by that point, I began to realize that Keemstar wasn't all that bad after all. He was innocent of a lot of the crimes that he was being accused of. I mean, hell, when those Keemstar videos were released, I was even brainwashed into thinking that Keemstar was this malicious guy when he really, honestly, was innocent of a lot of the stuff he was being accused of. Sure, a lot of the stuff was definitely fair. I won't deny that. But he's definitely not the guy that he was put out to be. And actually, right now, he really just recovered from being canceled again by H3H3 Productions. It's almost like Keemstar is the guy who just never dies. He's persistent. And I've got to respect that because I don't think anyone on YouTube has faced as much scrutiny as Keemstar for as long as they have in their entire careers. Keemstar has faced scrutiny for really his entire YouTube career. For years on end. Keemstar has been the bad guy. And honestly, that's what makes me really like him. As not only a creator, but as a personality in itself. He doesn't portray himself as the good guy of the internet. And that really is a breath of fresh air because I don't want to see good guys bullshit me about how they're good people. I want to see bad guys be honest with me. And the final cancellation for this video that we're going to talk about is Leafy is here. He's very symbolic of what YouTube used to be. Now, during his time on YouTube, he was really at the top of his game. There was no one that could really ever touch him. He was the untouchable commentary god. And I know it sounds stupid, but it was the truth. He was growing at staggering rates. In some months, even out-averaging PewDiePie on subs. And that was honestly a really impressive feat to make, because the fact that he was rivaling sub growth with the largest YouTuber at the time was something that we really never saw before. Now, the thing that led him to go down the spiral was really one event that we just previously discussed, and that was the Keemstar videos that he made along with Grade A Under A. Now, this at the time was really damaging to Keemstar. You know, this came out not even a month after the Content Cop was released on Keemstar. And he really made it just to profit off of all the traction that was being given to this Keemstar exposed story. Now, Leafy's numbers were, at this point, at their peak. They were peak growth rates. He was basically shoving Keemstar's reputation to the ground while simultaneously putting himself up on the top. He was involved in numerous other controversies as well, one of them being H3H3 Productions. But aside from that, he really was never challenged enough. And at a point where Leafy was so untouchable, one guy was able to set a big mark at his name. And that person was iDubbbz. iDubbbz released a video called Content Cop, Leafy is Here. And that video was responsible for the downfall of Leafy is Here's, maybe not channel, but definitely his reputation. Leafy got lambasted by the entire community for really the rest of that year and so on. Every commentator on YouTube came out of their way against Leafy and to show their support for iDubbbz, even though many of these commentators fell under the same category of what Leafy was criticized for. People like No Fuckers, I'm Alex, Wild Spartans, those guys all came out in support of iDubbbz, while at the same time critiquing Leafy. Leafy's response to the Content Cop was honestly just really bad. It was just bad. He made the response seeming like he didn't care about any of the criticism that he received. But in that same video, he applied a lot of the criticism that he said he, quote, didn't care about on that video. An example being where he complained about iDubbbz critiquing him for having long transition slides, but in that same video, he shortened his transition slides.
Another thing that you harped on was the transition slides.
For having a music clip transition for 3 fucking seconds too long.
And you've now shortened your transitions, and they're going to stay short, or they're going to disappear entirely.
There was just no winning that situation, regardless if Leafy made a good response or not a good response. Everybody was against him. Everybody didn't like him at this point. He was the new punching bag of the internet. Now, after the Content Cop, by that point, Leafy wouldn't really recover from that. Not until much later. Every video he uploaded after that was just dislike bombed by persistent iDubbbz supporters. He really didn't have anything to say that could really convince people of sticking with Leafy. His social blade just tanked. All of his numbers, his subs, even his views were just down, 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 down. Nothing was on his side. Nothing was rising for Leafy. And this actually brought me and a lot of other people to assume that YouTube was messing with his numbers, that YouTube was blackballing him. Not even that much longer after, we would see the release of the demonetization update, in which they would categorize certain videos uploaded by creators as either being ad-friendly or having limited to no ads. Once that system was released, Leafy's numbers just tanked even farther. There was really no coming back at that point. By the end of 2017, Leafy uploaded one final video and left. During the absence of Leafy, it was first met with a lot of support. I saw people on Twitter saying things along the lines of, you know, I'm glad that Leafy's gone, he was a menace to this community. But slowly, after more time went on, people began to surprisingly miss Leafy. They missed that cyberbully They missed that edgy persona that he portrayed. They missed that charismatic personality that he had. They missed the days where you could say whatever you wanted. Leafy was the edge on YouTube. And a lot of videos were being made at that point of people theorizing where Leafy went. The most well-done video being a video uploaded by Lemon called YouTube Geographic, Leafy Was Here. And that video really gave great insight onto Leafy's downfall, his demise, and where he was at during his absence. Now, Leafy would make a brief return on October of 2018 to do an interview with Keemstar, and they would basically just kind of come full circle. They would talk about a lot of what happened during Leafy's rise on YouTube and during his fall. And they even discussed the videos that were made against each other, more specifically Leafy's video against Keemstar, in which Leafy admitted that, the videos that he made against Keemstar were for money, for business.
I guess the final controversy that I can think of is when you and Grade backstabbed me. We were good friends, and you guys decided to make some YouTube revenue and make exposed videos. I mean, I know we spoke privately about this, and that's how we're even doing this interview. And we've made peace. But for the public's sake, why did you backstab me? In your words.
How can I reasonably justify this? AdSense was at an all-time high, but
I think that pretty much answered the question. So I think
I can only speak for myself. Obviously,
I think money and being successful has always been important to you, and that's part of the reason why you can just walk away.
When I saw that interview, it was really just nice to see him back again. To see the guy who really made the commentary community what it was back for one last time. And I kind of thought that when that interview was released that he wouldn't be coming back and that would be his last appearance on the website. But thankfully, I was wrong. Leafy returned to YouTube, in this year actually, to make fun of iDubbbz for being a cuck. By that point, that was just the biggest turnaround of all time. Now, Leafy's return was met with, honestly, praise. And it brought back a lot of nostalgia for what YouTube used to be. Everyone missed the edgelord of YouTube, and now he came back. And he came back in full steam. His social blade was just peaking again. It was almost like the numbers he used to make before. But when everybody was on his side again, Leafy was terminated. And that's kind of where we are now. YouTube gave a bullshit response to Leafy's termination. And now he really doesn't have a way of coming back to YouTube. The thing that really made YouTube interesting at that point, the thing that really brought traffic to YouTube, maybe not all of the traffic, but definitely a good portion of it, was Leafy and the commentary community. He was the guy who really made the community what it was. And the fact that he was terminated is just kind of symbolic of the end. In short, this video was just meant for me to explain my personal gripes with cancellation. Overall, how I feel about cancellation is it's just cancerous. It sucks. It's AIDS. It's a menace to this fucking world. People being canceled never works in their favor. But the one thing it does work at is ruining people's lives momentarily. Half the time, cancellations aren't even justified. There have been so many instances, like these ones we've discussed, where the cancellation really wasn't even fair, to be honest with you. Being canceled sucks. But if you can survive it, you will have achieved a feat that not many people can say that they have. And sometimes that redemption brings them back to the top.